Welcome to this short tutorial that is actually a prequel to my upcoming tutorial on how to paint Black Templars in a tabletop standard that will be up on the Grimdark Compendium this month. Let us have a look how I prime my Black Templars. I'll show you two different ways. I will lead you through the process of doing this with the airbrush first, and after that doing it by a regular brush. After priming both miniatures with Chaos Black spray from the rattle can, I pick one and go with the airbrush and Abaddon Black over all the parts I did not reach with the can. Using Vallejo Mecha Air Satin and airbrush thinner, I apply a thin coat of varnish on one of the miniatures to prepare it for washing. One or two thin coats should suffice here. Note that the following mixing ratio didn't work out in the end, but we will tackle the theory nonetheless. I used water, a little bit of thinner, along with Citadel's Morphing Brown Air. Of course you could use regular paint and just thin it a little bit more. But as said before, this mix is too thin, and in the end the color would not be as thick as I wanted it. Opaque is the word. At first I was too far away from the miniature, and even after I sprayed from closer and got enough paint onto the model, the end result wasn't really satisfying. So let's have a look at how we go about this with a regular brush. Lucky that I prepped two miniatures, right? I am using Abaddon Black here again, and I use a slightly bigger flat synthetic brush, and I want to reach all the gaps that priming with the rattle can did not reach. And I also can say that you could prime a miniature with a brush only, be it with or without a motorcycle driving in front of your window. When working over a rattle can primed miniature, try to have smooth, thin layers. When you go about a non-primed miniature, make sure that each layer you apply dries properly. Let us tackle that Morphing Brown wash next. The dilution did not work really well with the airbrush, so I went with a classic brush here too. I'm using the same brush that I use for priming, and I go for a slightly thicker consistency here. The trick is to have it thick enough that it covers the areas we want, but also thin enough that it pools where we want it. If it's too thin, it will just flow off the model and won't have the desired effect. Usually I would do this step after I'm done painting the miniature, but this will always affect the colors applied to the miniature. I also try to get a little less of the pigments on top of the miniature, as the main dust would collect below and on the feet, and I also dab away excess pigments and water from the miniature to accelerate my dry time. On the left you can see how it should look like directly after applying, and over on the right you see the already dried miniature and the effect I want to achieve here. Having a closer look to the miniatures, the one that I sprayed with a thin layer of satin varnish has the pigments in all the recesses and looks really clean, whereas the one that I primed with a brush, which had no satin varnish, builds those little excess pools. Yeah, satin varnish improves the flow of the wash, and we should use that here if we apply a wash like that. Let us tune that whole thing by dry brushing our miniature with Abaddon Black. This will also, to a certain extent, get rid of these blurry areas that the thin wash left on the unvarnished miniature. I use a bigger brush for that, and I also use one brush for one color. And I do not mix colors on my dry brushes. I work only the top and those areas that are slightly too brown for my taste. So in the end, while both look almost the same, the satin varnish gives us the edge here and the better flow, if not control, of the wash. Thank you for watching this experiment, and I hope that I can show you where we go from here in my next video tutorial over at the Grimdark Compendium. Stay tuned and be excellent to each other.